Okay, want to talk about the interview?
I was so excited to finally get to talk to George, being a fan for a long time. He graces our side wall. Love all of his projects, from his covers to this whole tale of Faustus and just how he manages to pull it all off and so prolifically.
Yes. Take it away.
Well, I'm so glad to finally talk to you. We have tons of questions for you.
Yeah.
Your poster's actually over here. We're
Yeah, do you know, I
we do
saw it
Yeah,
when
we
you
do
have
two,
the other
two.
angle.
Yeah, the other angle,
the other
right? Yeah.
angle you can
So
really see what's there.
Yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
was
because
like, I
we
recognize
started doing
that.
two angles because we had so much like pictures and posters and stuff. So we wanted to show off more. So we thought, well, why don't we do two angles? So and then we had to learn how to
Nice.
do like the news where it's like
Camera on.
back to you, Susie. We had to learn how to
Oh
do
yeah, of course, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's I guess it's an ever developing thing.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
you
Always
keep adding bits and pieces on and perfecting it over time. So
more ways to lose money. Yeah.
that's it. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask you, like, when did you first get into extreme music? Can you remember back, like, what was your gateway, to heavy music?
I mean, I think when I was so I grew up in the 90s on Brit rock, basically, Oasis, Blur, all of that stuff. And it wasn't until I went to boarding school when I was 11, and I remember a friend showed me the Tool album, uh, Enema, and I remember listening to it thinking, I have never heard anything like this before. And we
Mm.
sat there in the dark, I remember in our like boarding house, listening to the that song where it's just like the cycle of a kind of electric cable that snaps and it goes round the speakers. And we were just like, this is the scariest thing we've ever heard. Because my friend was into a lot of, I don't know why he showed me Tool, but he was into a lot of like, he did motocross. So he had a lot of like skate videos. And so that got me into like skate punk and stuff like that. And, but he also showed me Tool. And then he bought Korn, Follow the Leader. On a school trip to France, and we listened to it on the back of the bus, and it was, I think it's probably those two that kind of were a gateway. So I definitely like, I'm the kind of age where I hit new metal at exactly the time when it was like it was minutely marketed for my age, sort of
Yeah. Yeah.
14-year-old angry teenager. Um,
It seemed like JD from Korn was on the cover of Kerrang like every other week.
yeah, right. Yeah,
I
exactly.
loved him. Yeah. So
Yeah, and we couldn't really work out like we couldn't really relate to anything in of what Korn was doing. We just loved the music for some reason.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, it was that, and then I think in terms of like extreme stuff, it wasn't like throughout my teens. I sort of went the punk and hardcore and metalcore route. A lot of the early 2000s metalcore, which explains some of the stuff on this album, but it wasn't until probably when I was like 18 that I started. I think my friend showed me what did he definitely showed me Zasta and Leviathan and that kind of wave of American black
Yeah.
metal. Taka as well. I seem to remember that self-titled album. Um, and I thought, I mean, the Taka was great because it stood out as being very catchy. And that was the thing that drew me to it the most. It was kind of an easy sell, that one. But then very quickly, I was like getting into Emperor, Dark Throne. The first year of university was in. I went to uni in Exeter, down south, like further south than where I am, and there was a great store there that sold like everything as heavy as you can get, and I was in there a lot. None of my friends at uni were into. They were all into indie, so I was basically doing it on my own, but
Yeah.
nonetheless,
Yeah.
I also remember distinctly that album. Obvious as when I explain what it is, you'll know why. The Akakoka album, the one with the topless woman on the cover. Is it Go to Mendes? Is it that one? Anyway, I remember that one really standing out as like, okay, that's what this genre is about a little bit. It's dark, it's heavy, it's kind of sexy. Like,
Yeah.
what's not to love? So yeah, it was that, I guess. Very
Yeah.
long-winded answer, but that's my potted history of my music taste.
And that's funny. My Tool story goes like this. Around 2007, we went and saw a Tool cover band, and it was so great. I got so drunk. I crowd surfed like crazy. I was like, we gonna see the real thing as soon as they come around. Tickets were $275. I was like, fuck
Oh,
that.
oh wow. Okay. What's
We
the
didn't ever, we had a way better time with the $13 Tool cover band than we did.
sure.
Yeah.
Was that what's like the main venue in Baltimore? Sorry,
Oh, I
I'm
don't
not
remember
very
where
well
we saw
versed.
it. Like,
The big one now, it keeps changing names. So right now it's CFG Arena is a lot, and
yeah,
then
Okay.
we kind of seem to haunt the smaller venues like
yeah,
Baltimore Soundstage, Depot, Auto Bar.
yeah.
I like it so much better. We saw Knocked Loose at CFG,
Oh
and
yeah.
you were like, we were tight in seats, and he was like, they had a little mosh pit going, and like you wanted to, but it was so weird to be at a concert sitting. I was like, this is
Oh yeah, yeah.
oh,
We've got some of that here. There's I live in Bath, but in Bristol, which is like 30 minutes away from me, there's a venue called the Beacon, and yeah, it's quite an old school venue. But I saw Cannibal Corpse there recently, and it like luckily I was standing, but I look at the people seating at the back, and I think this if you're seated at a show like that, it just how would you do it? It takes a lot of willpower.
Right. Well, because we're used to like I don't know, 300 seat, where we're standing up. And I
Sure.
hadn't been to an arena show in years. And it was Knock Loose and Slipknot. And when they were trying to get the crowd going, and we were like,
the
in
guy
in a
next to you
box.
eating the
I'm
sub,
like,
so
yeah,
you don't want to be like,
yeah, the guy next to me is eating a meatball sub. Do you want him to mosh? It's like the fuck.
Wow, okay. I'm
that's
not
not
even
my
sure we're
preferred.
allowed to eat at shows here. I mean, the
Yeah,
smaller shows, yeah, but the arena is probably not.
yeah. Anyway, so yeah,
Or I'm used to like Maryland Death Fest where you're
yeah,
outside
big
and you
festival.
can
Oh,
just
what
go
one
crazy.
day, one day I'll be able to get to that
Yeah.
festival.
It's great. Lots of
Yeah,
walking. Yeah.
yeah.
Lots of walking.
Yeah.
So, how did you kind of arrive at the name Spider God? I'm guessing it has something to do with George, maybe. And it's crazy when you Google Spider God, how many of them there are, and like Native American and culture and Anansi and ugh.
Yeah, yeah, and I when I've the odd occasion that I've Googled myself or Spider God anyway, um, when that stuff comes up, I'm like, I kind of wish that it was linked to that kind of culture, but Spider God came from, uh, I guess it very quickly, basically, October 2020, when I kind of started this whole thing. I wasn't sure what to write lyrics about, and but I was very interested. I've always been interested in foreign film, indie cinema. My master's was in filmmaking, so I kind of like that's my background, and and I hadn't watched. I love Bergman, but I hadn't watched the Faith trilogy, at least not in a long time. And I stuck it on, and I was like, actually, do you know what? This would be great material to write lyrics about. Um, and that's what ended up being the three first EPs was one EP per film in that trilogy. And the first film of the trilogy, Through a Glass Darkly, features a woman who may or may not be sort of schizophrenic, maybe, and she sees this. She's obsessed with seeing God, and his imminent arrival, and at the climax of the film, this door opens after she's had a kind of a actually no, it's just before she's had this kind of fit. It's like a seance almost. This door sort of creeps open and she sees something. We don't see it, but she sees something invisible. And she freaks out basically. And afterwards she explains that what she saw, she expected God to come through the door, but it came through in the form of a spider. That sort of came towards her and then crawled up into her body and sort of possessed her. And that idea of a kind of malevolent god, I guess, that is unseen, and only certain people with certain issues, by societal standards, can kind of interact with. Kind of, I don't know, it struck me in a really interesting way, and I thought, Spider God, that seems appropriate. A kind of mixture of the malevolent and the heavenly, I guess, and it kind of stuck, I guess.
I was never afraid of spiders till that scene in Harry Potter. That did it. Oh my
Okay.
God.
Yep.
When they're that big and you can really see all their eyes and their fangs, I'm like, all right, I
Oh
don't know
yeah.
anything.
I'm famously not a fan of spiders. We a little thing that no one knows is that when we did the Four Winds of Revelation four-way split with Revenant Marquis, Sun's Journey Through the Night, and the Oracle, we had this group chat. We still have the group chat, and we had a Zoom call. We're just hanging out because we're all in different places, and there was I was walking around, and there was a spider on the wall. I was walking with my phone. I saw a spider and kind of freaked out, and I ended up rescuing it, should we say. I didn't kill it. I put it in a glass and chucked it outside, like on the call, and they were like, "Oh yeah, spider god, great, yeah."
They say you're never more than 2 feet away from a spider at any given moment. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Thanks for telling me that.
Yeah. So you had some one record I noticed where all the titles were in Swedish. What was the deal with that?
Yeah, so that's linked to the Bergman stuff. So Ingmar Bergman's films were all in Swedish, and I don't know a word of Swedish really, but I wanted to kind of I wanted to represent those films in an accurate way, and I like the way that Swedish sounds. So I decided to try to name all of the EPs and the tracks in both languages, and I got help from a few people. One notable guy who's a fan at the time, living in Sweden. Luckily, he was bilingual and was able to translate for me. I basically sent him what I thought the translation was for these song titles, and then he said, "Nope, you've used Google Translate, haven't you?" And he kind of tidied them up for me. So I have no connection to Sweden. It's totally borrowed, but it's fitting in the sense that it links to Ingmar Bergman's films being Swedish.
Sort of similar. I don't know if you well, they're from your neck of the woods. Uncle Acid and the Deadbeats.
Right,
The last
yeah.
album, the Nora Bell, where he over the pandemic he learned Italian so he could do a fake Italian horror soundtrack.
Oh yeah, the Giallo stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I haven't listened all the way through, but that looks really cool. I've had it recommended
It is
actually.
really cool. I've never been so excited to open a vinyl record. I was like 16 all over again when I got it. I was just like so glad that I snagged a copy because it's so
Nice.
crazy. So what an
Yeah,
idea.
There's
I love that.
more albums that are actually fake
Fake soundtrack.
soundtracks than you might
Yeah,
realize.
there's a lot actually. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I love that as a concept.
Yeah.
It's sort of what we do, but I I think the link between music and movies has always been like staple of Spider God. So yeah, I love that as an idea.
Yeah, really cool.
Kind of when you develop that world, it kind of reminds me of like Axamena and what they do because there's a whole backstory. I mean, you could have a whole set of graphic novels, just Faustus and the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've actually talked about it. I one of the things that I was massively influenced by as a kid was Donnie Darko, and I know that Richard Kelly's film that he made after that, Southland Tales, had three comic books associated with it, and Tom from Repose Records and I always talk about those as like, what if we did like a prequel trilogy
Yeah.
of graphic novels, like leading up to the album, kind of fleshing it out. And of course, Coheed and Cambria, which is one of my favorite bands, and they're kind of pivotal for my understanding how you can tell a story over more than one album and it not be totally navel gazing. You can still have fun with it. So Yeah, graphic novels would be cool.
Um, so I love your kind of blackened covers, everything No Doubt, Pointer Sisters, Britney Spears. What kind of started you down that rabbit hole?
Um, it's hard to remember exactly. I do remember sort of middle of 2021, around the time I was making Fly in the Trap. I mean, it was kind of post-COVID and stuff, and I just wanted to have a bit of fun. And I think the first cover that I did was the Everybody, Backstreet's Back, that cover that's on the Black Extensions. It's not on the main Black renditions, but I remember doing that just as an exercise to see how funny it would be to match up that like a black metal version to the original music
Yeah.
video, so that they're lip syncing to black metal. And I remember sending it around to a few people. I remember sending it around to, I don't know if you listen to the Terminus podcast.
Oh yeah, I know it. Yeah, I know it.
Yeah, I remember that we were they reviewed my first EP, and around the time we were sort of in touch, and they were like, "You've got to do more of this, man. It's it's the funniest thing." And but it was at Christmas time, 2021, and I think by that point I'd done the High School Musical cover, and we were laughing about it, me and Tom. And Tom was like, "You should do more of those. Maybe we should release it around like on the 12 days of Christmas, one a day."
Okay.
And I was like, "Yeah, but I've only got like 2 weeks now to get them all done." He said, "Well, you better hurry up then." So so I was averaging sort of, it just kind of snowballed. I had a list of songs that I loved, and I just went through them as quickly as I could, with the main kind of stipulation was, the rule was that I had to keep it the same BPM as the original. So no matter how fast or slow it was, I had to keep it the same so that it would sync up with the music videos. That was the original idea. We didn't think anyone would listen to them or anything, and then we put them out on consecutive days after Christmas, and people were like, they were kind of like, "Oh, that's funny," and "Oh, that's actually quite good." It's only on Instagram, and we were like posting what song should we do next, and what do you think we're going to do, and people were giving us ideas. So it was a real interactive like fan thing. But then it wasn't until it was like when we brought it out properly, and we weren't expecting anyone to really listen. We weren't expecting it to be an album. We were just gonna do these number of songs and then just leave it at that. But then Angry Metal Guy did the review that is now kind of infamous, where Kenny, who I'm really good friends with now, gave it 4.5 out of 5, which is kind of unheard of on that,
Yeah.
just in black metal or anything on that site. So, and I didn't really appreciate kind of what that would do, but it like inst kind of overnight made us the most kind of hated underground band, alongside Sidan, and also everyone kind of loved it as well. So we became a proper, what in England we call a Marmite band, as in I don't know if you know Marmite, but
Mm.
it's a kind of brown spread that's very salty, and you put it on toast, and it's disgusting for some people and absolutely amazing for others. And I really like Marmite, so I guess. And
Okay.
I also like pop
Gotcha.
covers, so there you
Yeah.
go. Yep, that's
I
that.
mean, at your shows, are people yelling out for you to play Britney Spears songs and stuff? I mean,
Yeah, the few shows we played, they generally do, like before the shows, they'll catch us and say, "Are you going to play, what are you going to play for Black Renditions?" Or, we might ask them on Instagram or whatever, like, "What do you want to play? Or what do you want us to play when you see us live?" And they always say Backstreet Boys or whatever it is. And
mm,
so we've kind of resisted making it like a big part of our live shows. But we did toy with the idea of doing like a kind of holiday um, Black Renditions show, where it's just Black Renditions
yeah.
from start to end, which we might still do one day. Um, but yeah, it's more of a challenge than you'd think. Some of the guitar parts are surprisingly complex.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah.
Makes me think of when we interviewed Zentrix. They're also UK, And just as soon as you bring up the Ghostbusters cover, you can just tell
They're like,
they
oh.
hate themselves for doing that, because
Yeah.
it was a
Yeah.
teenage decision, and now they're middle aged, and they're like, really, we're still getting the Ghostbusters requests. You know?
Yeah, someone told me very early on, like, you're never gonna live this down. Like, this will be your and I honestly innocently was like, "Ah, no one cares enough, you know." And it's still every single review that we get will mention the covers, and they'll kind of work in how our original stuff is influenced by the covers and that kind of thing. And I just don't agree. But I agree that I have a pop sensibility, but I don't agree that the covers helped me make the songs in any way or influence the writing of the originals. It's very separate for me.
So, how did you kind of come across? Like, I love the idea of the whole story of Faustus and getting sucked into the game. And do you play games like that, or just the thought of maybe we always tease, with our computer AI that he talks to all the time,
Hmm.
whether he was actually talking with it about computers taking over and which one he would rather play chess with. I'm like, you're scaring me a little.
The HAL 9000, the HAL 9000 or the Terminator. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
have all
yeah.
kinds of chat GBT discussions like
My
that.
God.
Oh, nice.
But
Well, you
how
know,
did you kind of arrive at that world? I love it.
yeah, I guess I find it difficult sometimes to trace back the origin of these things, and I don't play video games very much. Like I'm a big fan of Tomb Raider, and that's kind of it. Like and then like early, I don't know, Mario, and I always used to play Sonic, but like those games always used to make me really angry when I was a kid, and my parents said like they've never seen me angry. They never saw me angry until I started playing video games, and so and I think I kind of realized that, and then just didn't indulge it too much. I was always the guy who went around to the friends' houses who had all the your friends by the different consoles they have. So
Okay. Yeah.
you kind of yeah, you split your time between the different console owners. But yeah, I mean, definitely not. I don't play games now. I just don't have time. But I have always been fascinated by, I guess, like what they call portal fantasies. So Alice in Wonderland's a good example. Anything where someone goes through into another world through a door or a portal or that kind of thing. And I think maybe one of the influences was there's a German series called Dark. I don't know if you get that over in the
Yes,
States,
I
but
love that.
yeah,
Yeah.
what an amazing show. And it kind of incorporates bits of Donnie Darko kind of science fiction, like time travel stuff. It plays into interesting concepts like the bootstrap theory and kind of like endless loops and that kind of thing. And I've always been interested in those kind of ideas. And again, like I mentioned before, Donnie Darko and that kind of thing. Mulholland Drive, another one where it's kind of like I, I've always been interested in the idea of a Mobius strip where you can twist a piece of paper and make it have three-dimensional shape, but it's only actually got one side. So using that as a concept to kind of flip over to another world and then back again has always been an interesting concept to me. So I kind of started there, and then this idea of a game started to emerge as a kind of like vessel for this other world. But I always wanted it to be that it was uncannily real to the players, and they couldn't figure out how the technology could have moved on so much so quickly that it felt like it was real life. Until they realized that there's something wrong with the game and it's actually putting them inside the mind of real serial killers. And some of them sort of willfully stay ignorant of that and then keep on playing the game, and then some find that too much and try and escape, but it's not always that easy. Yeah.
I love that you combine true crime with that. We're real big true crime documentary junkies, and it's
Oh,
always
nice.
so
Yeah.
horrible, but you can't look away.
Well, this is it. Yeah. I mean, with Fly in the Trap, I was dealing with the Elisa Lam case, and I think it was from there that I guess I transitioned from this sort of writing lyrics that kind of document the stories of films to something real life. That was always going to be a difficult thing because it can get so near the knuckle when it comes to treating the subject matter, right? And I tried to navigate that as best I could with Fly in the Trap, kind of, partly knowing that most people aren't going to follow the lyrics anyway, but if they do, I don't want them to read it and think that I'm being disrespectful, I guess, to the victims. And that was the same with Possess the Devil, but kind of more so because I was writing about more true crime stories. In fact, the original version of the album was just a series of songs that told the stories of different murders. So it wasn't until I kind of matched it up with this concept of a VR game that I realized that it was one story. But yeah, I'm a big true crime fan as well. With while also realizing that it's an odd thing to like.
No, we're so into it.
Yeah.
Like, I actually have pet peeves with it. Like, if they talk about a suspect and then like it's a cop and he just says, we ended up absolving them from suspicion. Like, I want to know why. I'm like, this guy's
Yeah,
motive was so strong. Don't just tell me he's been cleared. Like, where was he? I want to know. Like,
yeah,
who is he
yeah,
with?
yeah,
And
yeah.
when they
There's
don't tell you why they cleared him, it drives me nuts. You know what I mean? Because I'm
yeah,
like, I think he did it. I think it was him.
yeah, exactly right. And yeah, it drives that need to know more and more and to really
Yeah.
piece together the whole thing. Yeah, and that can go on forever.
That's when you get out your yarn and your pictures and
That's it. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I've never made one physically, but
no, me either, but yeah.
that is what my head looks like sometimes.
Oh, gotcha.
I
Yeah.
I did, but it was for a game. I used to have this monthly subscription. It was called Hunt the Killer, and they would
Oh
send you
wow.
like
Okay.
physical box of clues, and then there were websites that you had to go to and figure stuff out, and puzzles you had to solve. Oh, I had the whole thing going. I was just because you had to try to keep
Well, this
up
was
with this
COVID
thing.
too, wasn't it?
Yeah,
That was your
yeah.
COVID thing. Yeah.
That's awesome. So it's like
Yeah.
a kind of you're the detective
Yeah.
and you get given like a physical. I've seen those. It wasn't. I think it was called something else. Maybe they've made another sort of
There's a
series, but
couple of them.
that yeah, I've always been tempted. It's kind of halfway between a kind of board game and a murder mystery party sort of thing. Yeah, I love that.
So for this album, it came so quickly on the heels of the other one. Did you already have it kind of thought out, or did it just kind of happen that it was a sequel?
Yeah, so this one was written first,
Mhm.
and it was written. I mean, I took off cuts that I didn't use in Fly in the Trap, bits of riffs and that kind of thing, and I used that to start the next one. So I was already making it in probably, well, I had a couple of riffs all the way back to 2021, probably. And I've always had a few things that are almost ready to go before the last thing comes out. So I always have something I can put out at some point. And I was really used to that for a while, especially the first like year and 2 years of the band. I had like three things that I was waiting for the label to put out before, and I was working on like the fourth thing. So, but then time caught up with me, and uh, I just had this one album that I really wanted to put out, but I didn't. I knew that I wanted to try and get it recorded properly, at least the drums. And my drummer lives in Massachusetts, and so it's not obviously we can't sort of meet up and jam, but we he knows he's in with the kind of the scene up there, the hardcore scene, and knows the guys from God City. And when I heard that, all of my favorite albums have been recorded there, so I wanted to see whether I could maybe get the drums recorded there. And so that snowballed, and eventually I managed to go to God City and record some guitar parts, and as well as us recording the drums, and it was all mixed there and everything. But then the process of that took such a long time to kind of wait for that and wait, and getting the flights and everything. It was all months in advance, and then it had to be mixed. So in the meantime, I was cooking up another idea, and then when I literally probably the day after I got back from the States, I started writing and recording what ended up being The Killing Room, as a kind of prequel to this album that hadn't come out yet. And it only took me a few days. It really sort of like just came out, and I recorded it at home instead of getting other people to mix it and everything. And it was kind of ready by January, so I decided to put it out. Actually, hang on, no, before January, because we put it out on Christmas Day. So I decided to kind of rush release that with the anticipation that that Possess the Devil would come out later. But I thought Possess the Devil would come out in about February, but I didn't realize how long mixing takes when you do it professionally. So I had to wait till November for that. And meantime, I tried to work out how to make it a trilogy, and it could be that there'll be a third part to this at some point.
So the label's what, Repose Records?
Repose Records,
How's
yeah.
it? How's the experience been with them?
It's been great. It's I'm glad you asked, because it's a huge part of why I'm still going, I think. Tom, I've worked with a few labels, and I've had good experiences with all of them without exception. Death Prayer treated me really well with the first three EPs, and Phantom Law. We're really good friends. I'm really good friends with Jürgen from Phantom Law, and a few others. Oh, Danny, Go to Warex is a nice guy as well. But then Tom, I was working on the album, I think, Fly in the Trap, and I think it was. No, it wasn't during COVID because I was allowed to go outside, but it was like between the lockdowns, I think. And he he lives up in Lincoln, so that's like the other side of the country. It's kind of north of London, quite away, the Midlands. And he ordered me a Costa coffee. Costa's like the brand of coffee over here, like Starbucks. And he ordered one to my house, which I didn't like. I didn't even know you could do that. And unfortunately, I'd just gone out. The coffee was ordered. He was like, "This is to keep you going with the album." This was before we'd worked together properly. And I came back after a couple of hours and found this sad, like cold coffee sort of blown over and spilled out on the grass in front of my house. So they obviously just left it on the porch. And but I thought the sentiment was really nice, and I thought, yeah, this is a guy I might want to work with. And ever since, we've just been really good friends. He was a big catalyst for why we did Black Renditions. We worked really closely on Fly in the Trap, getting that release out, and the Killing Room, all the stuff with the evidence bag, with the yeah, and like a police evidence bag with a tape in it, and this key card that's supposed to be part of the game. All of this kind of thing, we kind of come up with together. So there's a lot of back and forth, and he also is the guitarist in the live version of the band as well. So no, we're very good friends and have kind of grown closer over the years. And yeah, it's a relationship that is uh, I don't think without him, I'm not sure that I'd still be going, to be honest, because he kind of he's a good one for going. Right, what's next? He's sort of endlessly optimistic about stuff, and
That's good.
but he's realistic too. He'll be like, "No, I don't think you should do that," or he'll be like, "No, we literally don't have the money to put out 500 copies of that, or we can't do that extra variant." But like I trust his judgment on stuff. So yeah, I'm lucky. I'm very lucky to have him.
So I kind of had a couple track specific questions.
Hmm.
For Cromer Culture, does that have anything to do with the festival? Because it kind of seems like it's something that's not a good thing.
Oh yeah. No, that one is there's a podcast called Teacher's Pet, and it's about Chris Dawson and Lynette Dawson. Chris Dawson was a teacher in Australia, and he worked at a school called Cromer High, and he was pretty openly having an affair with one of his students. Like all the students knew. It was a bit of a culture, hence chroma culture. It was a bit of a culture in the 70s for that kind of thing to go on, and everyone turned a blind eye. But one day his wife goes missing, and then very soon afterwards, the student moves in to his house, and then they get married, and then they don't stay together, but it's almost like a kind of cuckoo situation where this new person sort of pushes the old person out, and so the whole thing's quite murky. But then she's never found, so they still haven't found her body. Um, but they have actually weirdly recently convicted Chris finally after all these years. They couldn't get any evidence on him, and he was scot free for many years. But yeah, they've convicted him now. But they hadn't when I actually wrote the song, so it felt like a kind of hot topic.
Yeah.
So that's what the song is about. And he was a rugby teacher, and at my boarding school we used to play rugby, so it's got a lot of rugby references in there.
Something about Carnivorous Minds with kind of that minor chord riffing and the drum hits kind of punctuating the vocals, really building the suspense. For some reason, it took me back. We love to watch old Alfred Hitchcock movies. In fact, we watched a great one the other night. When you're kind of building that tension, do you have like something that kind of inspires what you want it to sound like?
Hmm. Do you mean like just kind of sonically what the build is going to sound like, or
Yeah, like when you're kind of designing that, it really, if you listen to it in headphones, you get chills.
yeah, I'm actually I'm pretty intuitive. Is that the right word? When it comes to writing a song, I just kind of whatever feels right, I will add it in, and it's a very I treat it in quite an abstract way. I have in the back of my mind what the structure is going to be, and I know what needs to happen next, but I don't always quite know like how it's going to build or what I'm going to bring in to make it build. But that one went through quite a few different iterations. It might be spoiler that I'll release a the demo versions of these songs maybe as a separate release because they're quite different. But I had quite a lot of, now that you bring it up, I had quite a lot of trouble with that song, getting it right and getting the mood right. Because it felt quite different to me from other Spider God songs. And I wasn't it didn't always work. So often one of the songwriting things I do, which is kind of borrowed from pop, I guess, is like at least maybe the first chorus, take out everything apart from just the guitar line and the vocal to kind of get people used to what the chorus sounds like, and then bring it all back in. And then, but I might also do that towards the end of the song as well. And I'm surprised more people haven't noticed that I'm basically a one-trick pony when it comes to that. Like the last chorus is always stripped back, and then it comes back in again, maybe half speed or maybe blasting. So I'm always like tension release is a big thing for me, but that is the thing I get from pop rather than any heavy music. Weirdly, maybe it does subconsciously, but I'm more like trying to build up the. I want there to be this huge dynamic between this huge build and then suddenly cutting off. And I guess it goes along with the song's lyrics. That is the darkest song on the album for
Yeah.
sure because of the subject matter. I don't know whether you picked up on what it's about, but that's another. Have you listened to the podcast Down the Hill by any chance? The two girls on the bridge.
I don't think so. Yeah.
Yeah, they it's the Delphi murders. The two young teenagers who get killed, and they actually it was quite recent, and they literally had the court case while I was promoting the album, and
Wow.
I had no idea because it was dug up after a few years of nothing happening, and they they managed to again, they literally just convicted the guy just before Christmas, and it's a weird like coincidence. But it was that was the hardest song to write in terms of I didn't want to go into any detail. Actually, they didn't know any detail about what happened when I was writing the song, which is kind of, I'm glad, because I wouldn't want to try to put in any detail, but I wanted it to be more of an existential song that is that actually ended up being more about, because it's actually from the perspective of a different character who played that level and got so spooked out that he wanted to leave the game. And he kind of warns the main character, there's something weird going on here, like this is too real. um so so yeah, going back to your question, I guess the I wanted there to be this build because the circumstances of the deaths of these girls is almost like they were going into a trap that they couldn't escape from, and it was all kind of almost on a biblical level, like all gearing them towards this thing that happened. And whether you turn left or you turn right on this path, like it doesn't really matter. It's like it's already predestined. So I really wanted that build to feel like this force that can't be stopped. Yeah, I guess.
With all the heady concepts that you come up with, and all the layering and all the sonics and all, do you ever feel like I'm never going to be able to reproduce this live? Like, do you ever get to that quandary?
Yeah, for sure. I guess I never started this project thinking that it was going to be played live.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means I'm a bit freewheeling with the riffs, and there are a couple of riffs that I don't think I could pull off live, to be honest. I think Tom can because he's a better guitarist than me, but I always throw stuff at him, and he's learnt it within a couple of days. And I'm like, I don't think I could play that all the way through on my own.
Mm.
I could record it in sections,
Mm.
but yeah, I do think that that it is a challenge for sure. Um, when we've played live, we've sort of thought, how much of this do we want as a backing track, and how much of it do we want to be able to just play live? And we fell on the side of wanting it to be a bit more punk and DIY, and just not try and recreate it that faithfully. But then the technicality of the songs kind of warrants, and the kind of the size of the sound meant that actually we ended up, especially with keyboards and stuff, using a backing track and click tracks to kind of flesh it out a bit. But yeah, we definitely had the ethos that we would try and recreate it with two guitars and just see what happens. And yeah, I guess we just avoid the songs that that are nearly impossible to carry off live.
I have an idea for your next EP.
Okay.
Um, you could write songs about how the serial killer screwed up. Like, you were so brilliant, and then you used your credit card, really? Or you bought you bought a shovel, duct tape, and wire ties at the same store. You know what I mean? Like, find where they
Yeah.
fucked up. Really, you left the condom. Like
Yeah.
each one
Yeah.
it could be, because when
I
when
like
we're
that.
watching a show and something like that happens, we're both like, Jesus Christ, you know,
Yeah.
get everything else right.
There was this one,
Yeah.
this guy had killed this woman, and he went to Walmart, and he went there like 2 in the morning, bought a suitcase to shove her in, and used the credit card.
Right.
And when they
Wow.
found her, they immediately, this was something only sold at Walmart, and there were only so many in the area, and there's not that many people in the store that time of night. I'm like, oh my God.
Or like, you
I
looked
know.
right up at the camera.
Use an old
Yeah.
suitcase.
You looked right up at the
That
camera,
I mean, I'm fine with the idea that some serial killers secretly want to be caught, and
Yeah.
so they sort of intentionally, the Zodiac killer or whatever, they intentionally sort of put things in place so that they'll eventually get seen. But
Yeah.
yeah, I watched an awful film recently called Deep Water. I think it's called Deep
Oh
Water.
God.
Do you see that with
I
Ben
think
Affleck?
the shark one.
Ben
Oh no,
Affleck.
not that one, not that one.
Oh,
I
no.
think,
Um,
oh, you're thinking Deep Blue
Oh,
Sea. No,
no.
not that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, this is a new one, generic name, so you'd be forgiven for getting the wrong film. It's Ben Affleck and Anna de Armas, and he basically, without spoiling it too much, his wife is cheating on him in front of him all the time, and they both know it, like it's not a secret, and he's trying to be cool with it, but he actually isn't. He threatens to kill one of these sort of boyfriends that she brings back, and then eventually actually does it, and it kind of starts from there. But the kind of side thing is that he's into snails, and he sort of when he's angry, he goes down to his shed or whatever and sprays these snails with water just to kind of like get his mind out of his
Okay.
anger. And but at the end, he gets caught because he puts the ID of this guy's just killed into the snail, like just into the snail's, like, I don't know, like container, and they're all kind of crawling all over it, and the wife finds the ID. I mean, I won't
Yeah.
spoil the end. It actually is a nice twist, but yeah, it's things like that. It's like, come on,
Yeah.
what? No one's going to do that. I know that's fictional, but still, it's
Right. Serial killers that are into snails, the filter gets really specific, you know.
that's it exactly. Yeah.
I love the little nod you put in there, like police, the in merciless agenda. But I honestly always thought that was a creepy song.
Oh yeah, yeah. That one is that one was a fun one to make, and again, I don't really know the origins of it, but that was kind of crucial for me because I wanted in the chorus to make it uh, reference a few different murders, and like ones that were more than we've dealt with in other songs. So it mentions the case of was it Adnan, and that they do in Serial season one. I've forgotten the girl's name. Um, anyway, the girl that gets buried in Leakin Park, and that as many have, it's not just her, but so they, which is in Baltimore, right? That
Yes.
yeah. So that case, I wanted to like mention it because the original version of Divine Intervention was about that case, and then I changed the lyrics because it didn't quite work at the time. But again, it's on the demo, so I might. That's why I want to release them because they're quite different. But yeah. But I also wanted. It was crucial because it kind of is the crux of the whole thing, which is the realization that um, the game maker originally had good intentions. He wanted to cure men of a potential murderous intent towards women, and so he created this game as a kind of exposure therapy idea, a bit like a Clockwork Orange. But instead of keeping his eyes open, you get them to play the game, and it's so real that they get turned off by the whole idea. Um, and so this idea that it's a murderous agenda, but it's a murderous gender, that perhaps men are inherently murderous, and you have to be cured of it. And whether that's true or not, that's what the character kind of comes to realize in that song. So it was a really crucial one, but it was a surprisingly easy song to write. I wrote it very quickly with that fun riff, the kind of Slayer riff
Yeah.
Yeah.
that Tom always makes fun of me for.
Yeah, funny story. When my son was in college, he used to get computers, and if they were broken, he could fix them, and then he would resell them on like Craigslist. And one time I said, "Where are you going?" He's like, "Oh, this guy's gonna buy his computer." I'm like, "Where are you going?" He's like, "Lincoln Park." I said, "The hell you are? No,
Oh
you're not."
wow,
I
okay.
was like, "You better meet him at a Starbucks." No, no. Uh-uh.
Oh gosh. So it's quite renowned in the area, I
Yeah.
imagine. Yeah, it's always kind of freaked me out ever since listening to Serial. I kind of half want to go there and half don't.
There's
I definitely
so
want to go
many
to
like
Baltimore, but
there's
Yeah.
so many like ominous kind of bad areas. And I used to run the Baltimore Marathon, and it went through all of them. You went through
oh,
Druid Park, you went through Clifton Hill. At least you were in the middle of the day and you were running. But I was like, what is this? The who planned this course?
oh wow, yeah, that's quite intense. I mean, and I mean, I'm a big fan of The Wire as well. So like having that knowledge, I haven't got many sort of overtly positive views of Baltimore, but I know, but
Well,
in a
you
way
won't
I
from us
do.
either. We don't have any either.
Right, okay.
So I really liked Foss Impact. I think that was possibly my favorite one. There's so many layers. Do you have a favorite and least favorite instrument when it comes to record? You like dread it the most?
Oh gosh. Not not really. I stick to a very basic palette of guitars, bass, drums. I mean and then maybe one set of synths, but it's not too heavy on the synths. I think the album again, we re-recorded a lot of the MIDI stuff I'd done with real violin. And I wasn't there for the recording of that, so I don't know how difficult it was, but I think it was quite a challenge. So yeah, if I ever had to put together any instruments that were kind of unconventional like that, then I would struggle because I don't play any of those instruments for one thing. But do you know? I think actually vocals are the probably the most challenging. I don't like I sing. I can do clean vocals just about. I just don't like what my voice sounds like when I record it. I haven't found a technique yet to not hate my singing vocals. So I stick to the harsh vocals for now. I'd like to bring in more cleans, but yeah, it never seems to work out when I do them. But yeah, the harsh vocals is just it's just such an onslaught. I'm not. I don't think I'm naturally. Some people really can just take to harsh vocals and they can do it and do it for hours and then other people are trained. I'm not trained at all. And doing over the years I've kind of strengthened my voice and I'm able to do it for longer periods of time. But that particular I mean the album, I think I was kind of ill when I was doing it. It might have been the actually funny enough, I think I might have had COVID when I was doing the vocals, and but I was also determined to go through the whole song without any repetition, without cutting and pasting anything. So um, that was kind of stupid. Every other release I've done, I've managed to just cut and paste some of it, and then it kind of works. You might layer the vocals, whatever. But yeah, you end up with a pretty sore throat because it's not like because you can do when you've got adrenaline and you play live, you're projecting to an audience, and there's something about that that means that you loosen up your throat and it's much easier to go. And also you're playing for a maximum of well like 40 minutes, so I can stand that. But when you're recording and you might be spending 8 hours just on vocals, I don't really know when to stop. It's kind of when I feel like I'm going to pass out.
Yeah,
So I think, to be honest, yeah, that for me personally. I think that's the biggest challenge. I like playing riffs, unless I keep getting the same thing wrong, and then it's really frustrating, obviously. But yeah, vocals I think is the hardest.
I wanted to ask you about To the Furnace. Can you explain like the whole sequence, car to furnace, then through the
Confused.
forest, the lake, that whole thing?
Oh yeah, sure. I could use a prop for this. Hang on a
Oh
second.
my.
Yeah, don't worry, it's not sinister.
Okay.
It might be. So well, before we released the song, we went to we sent out these postcards basically that have the to the furnace thing.
Okay.
And these were Tom faithfully drove all the way to Leeds, to the town, the little sort of town district in Leeds where this murderer's house actually is, and went to the house and filmed himself going past the house, and filmed it as if he was the murderer walking to the post box and posting all of these postcards. And then a couple of days, we released the video on this separate Bandcamp just for the like closest fans. And a couple of days later, some fans got this postcard, and they didn't know what it was for. I guess most of them knew it was Spider God. I think some of them were saying that their postman gave them a funny look, but they
Yeah.
they basically have a QR code on. If you can figure it out and figure out the password, then you can get the password is like in the letters. Some of the letters are in capital letters and it spells something, but it's an anagram of it. Anyway, then you get early access to the song. So some people manage to do it somehow. But we also put a like UV. We wrote a UV pen that says what was it? Neon Shiver Saves, which no one knew who that was. But on our Discord, we'd recently added a new member called Neon Shiver, and no one really knew. They didn't really think about it. But when they saw that on the post, they somehow managed to get a UV pen, a UV light, and they saw what it was. And then they realized that the newest member of the Discord was actually a character from the story, and they could actually interact with him as if he was a real person and asking questions about the album. So it's a whole like thing. But yeah, anyway, so to the Furnace is about Keith Hall, who apparently killed his wife by strangling her and burying her body in the local like no, how did he do it? So I mean, this is exactly his. He drove the car from his house to the furnace because he was a baker, and he had access to a furnace. So apparently, he dumped the body in there, then went through this forest, and then dumped, I guess, the ashes in the lake. But the thing was that he was never caught. He was interviewed and about it, and he said, "Oh, yeah, I've heard there's something going on. I don't know what's going on here." And then he turned up at the police were digging in a certain area that was completely wrong, and he turned up, and you can see him in the background, sort of vaguely enjoying it because he knows they're wrong. But then he confessed to someone that he now says he knew she was an undercover cop, but he didn't. He might not have done at the time, and he confesses the whole thing, and that's when he told everyone about the process. But then they couldn't use it in court because they taped it, but that was an unlawful way of gathering the information because they kind of tricked him into saying it, supposedly. So he's still free. And the documentary about him has him being interviewed, and he still swears that he didn't do it. He was just saying it as a joke, kind of. So it's one of those like really cocky, kind of arrogant things to do. And I wanted the song to be really arrogant, like "You'll never catch me." I did all these things, but I also didn't do those. Officially, I didn't do those things, but secretly, I did.
Yeah, I love the gingerbread man references.
Yeah, that was a bit of a joke because he's ginger and he makes breads because he's a baker. So
I don't know if you've seen John Wayne Gacy documentaries, but he was kind of like that. He was kind of like, "What do you want? I have stuff to do. I am head of the union. I don't
oh
have time to
yeah,
waste time." And my
yeah.
joke was always that he didn't get enough credit for his masonry skills. Wow,
Okay.
that man was a whiz with concrete.
Absolutely. Honestly, yeah, behind every serial killer is there potentially an expert craftsman of some kind.
Yeah.
So you had that Ernest Owl, which was also kind of a strange. Just how did you put those two things together? Children's stories and
Yeah, well, yeah, you've done your
synth
research.
music.
So around, I think this is no, it's a weird kind of genesis of this because Phantom Law was one of the first labels to put out comfy synth, which is what that genre is, and it was kind of an antidote to dungeon synth, where there's kind of an uncanny kind of childlike innocence to the subject matter, but then it was kind of dark as well. And I thought that was a really cool concept, very stupid, but kind of cool. And Dungeons Deep also put out a lot of comfy synth, and it was really interesting to me. And I actually had a project that weirdly fit into that category that I did with a friend when I was 18, so back in like 2005, 2006, and that was called the project's called Waterboatman, and that's like another one that's very similar to that. It's I think Gems label, if you know Gems label, they put out Waterboatman. So I'm like label mates with Sidan doing that stuff. But then like the Ernest Owl stuff, I was recording the first EP, and then I recorded the second EP. Kind of, I did the first EP one week, and then the second EP the second week. And in the weekend in between, I had these weird synth sounds, and I was kind of getting into comfy synth. And I was like, do you know what? I really need a break from doing black metal. Let's just keep the exact same session with the exact same synth sounds, which are kind of distorted, almost like Mellotron sounds. And I just kind of put together these songs that were based on some children's books that my mum used to read me when I was very little. Blackberry Farm is the name of the series, and Ernest Owl is one of the characters. So all of the illustrations are straight from that book. I just kind of changed the colors and stuff. And yeah, so I did that in one weekend. So it's literally 2 days. I just did the whole thing and then just put it out. And it actually, at the time, kind of gained some traction in the sub genre of comfy synth.
Right.
But it's kind of died to death now. No one really cares, but it's good that you know that.
Well, I think it's time for us to play our game. We
Oh gosh,
have a
okay.
game on the show called
Okay.
Blaspheming Monikers, right?
Right.
And yeah, the way it works is 5 band names in front of me. One is made up, and I need you to try to sniff out which one you think is fake. Okay. Okay. All right. Blaspheming Monikers, 5 bands. Here we go. First, Sarcastic Murder. Second, Contemplating Murder. Third, Murder Cafe. Fourth, Moore's Murder. And fifth, Murder She Wrote.
Okay, well, Murder She Wrote has to be one. That has to be real. Did you say Sarcastic Murder?
Yeah, Sarcastic Murder.
That's the second one. What was the first one you said?
Well, the first
Sorry.
one was Sarcastic, then it's
Oh yeah,
Contemplating Murder,
Contemplating
Murder
Murder. Yeah,
Cafe,
Murder
Moore's
Cafe.
Murders, and Murder She
Wars,
Wrote.
murders. Do you know? I'm going for Sarcastic Murder. I don't think that's real.
They're death metal from Australia.
Ah,
They only have
okay.
2 EPs, but they are real. So,
Love it. I'm going to listen to those guys.
so that leaves Contemplating, Murder Cafe, Moore's Murders, and Murder She Wrote.
Hmm. I feel like Murder Cafe has to be a real one. Moore's Murders seems like pretty obvious. Murder She Wrote seems pretty obvious. So seems obvious, but Contemplating Murder.
Doom Death from California. They have one full
Okay.
length. Yeah.
All right.
Actually,
Okay.
the one I made up was actually Moore's Murders. There isn't really a band called that.
Ah, I love it.
Interestingly, there was Chrissy Hines' band in the 70s was called Moore's Murders,
No
and
way.
they talked her out of it. They were like, "No, you don't want this kind of action." So
Fair enough.
yeah,
But I,
yeah,
I love how that would be like a reason to have this band name in in the modern world. You
yeah,
wouldn't be
yeah.
talked out of
I
it
was really
nowadays.
surprised that nobody's taken advantage of talk about serial killer, So
Great
yeah,
idea. Right,
yeah.
that's my next side project then. Thank
Okay,
you.
there you go. Right. Yeah.
Love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, God, we watched this infuriating one of those People magazine documentaries the other night where the guy was having an affair and the wife kind of knew about it. And then the kids were home and they said she went out for milk and she never came back. So sure enough, they find her dead in the car at the food store. And they
Oh, wow.
actually had him, I think, on tape, or so they figured out that he had his girlfriend come pick him up at the Winn-Dixie where she was and drive him home. He got found innocent because they threw enough shade that it might have been the girlfriend who did the killing and not him, that he got off.
No
I was like,
way.
wow.
Yeah.
How does that work? I feel
They
like
just do it.
if you watch enough of these things, you can map out all the best ways to to not make a mistake.
Well, and it makes the police look so stupid too. A lot of times, just it really
Yeah, for
does.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I'm sure it's more complicated than the situation in real life, but at least for us,
Yeah.
it
On
looks
our
stupid.
comfy couches. Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Yeah.
So do you think you'll ever do like any videos or visualizers for this to put up? And what do you think Faustus would look like?
Yeah, I mean, the Faustus has always been he's always appeared in masks, and building the lore kind of backwards, we decided that whenever we posted a picture of someone in a mask, like uh, in our they weren't in the EPs, but kind of in a couple of our splits, we've got this mask, and we decided that was Faustus. So I don't think he'll ever have a real face. It'll always be the mask. But yeah, I mean, I'm a visual guy. You can probably see the camera in the background. That's what I do now, videography. But it, in terms of, I'd love to put together a music video. I've always wanted to do that. I've kind of done half a one, but it's not enough. And I'm a big fan. Lots of people like quite narrative based music videos. I just my favorite music videos is when you can watch the band playing, and they do it in a way that's visceral and really gets you into the song. I've always loved that. So that's what I'd want to do, and it probably wouldn't cost too much to put together as long as we get a good cinematographer. Um, so we'll see. Maybe in the future we will. But yeah, in terms of like I've I've thought of all kinds of ways that I can represent this album and other ones visually, and I think that it might be that I'll write out the story one day. I'm trying to write it as maybe a book or something, and who knows, maybe that will turn into something visual. Because if I had the money, I would make a movie, but at the moment I do not.
Maybe one day.
Maybe one day. That's
Maybe one
the
day.
dream for sure.
Maybe at some of your live shows, you could have like a Faustus character slinking around in the back.
Honestly, that would be great. Yeah, yeah, a character it doesn't do anything, doesn't play an instrument. It's just sort of walking around. Kind of
Yeah.
I like the way Dream Theater did it with their Metropolis stuff, and they had the psychiatrist's couch and all of that kind of thing. I think that's that could work. Make it into a big kind of audio visual event. That'd be
We
quite
went to
nice.
see this band called Castle Rat, and they kind of do like kind of Sabbathy. And the girl like wears like a chain metal bikini, but they have this person that just kind of comes on stage and does battle with her. She does nothing in the band. They do sword fights and ridiculous stuff. And
That's
Yeah.
great. Why
Yeah.
not? Yeah, I mean that's the kind of fun that you can have with this genre. I think sometimes it can be very, very serious, and we all take it seriously, but we also like to have fun. I think most people I meet that are into the kind of music we're into have a wicked sense of humor. So it's yeah, the world's our oyster when it comes to that. I wouldn't mind employing a couple of amateur actors or I don't know
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
like that.
well, hopefully one day we'll be able to catch you live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to play the States. I was talking to a guy recently about they really wanted to put me on in Indianapolis, I think, and I've got various sort of points of places where I'd love to play, and slowly but surely trying to form an idea of playing a US tour. Um, but it would be very DIY, and I just have to work it around work. But
Mhm.
I would love to come over because I think it's about time. And I studied in the States only for a year, but it was like a kind of year abroad in New York. So I've always been a big fan of the States in general. Not everything, but a lot of it. So yeah, I'd love to come to Baltimore for the reasons we've said earlier. That
Yeah.
or maybe I'll do that run.
Yeah.
Take me on a
Yeah.
whistle stop tour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were talking about that you
Not
were
at night.
Not at
you
night,
mentioned
absolutely
you
not.
mentioned Massachusetts earlier. I've always wondered if you get a degree from Harvard and you're at a party and then someone's there who got a degree from Oxford, does that mean you've been trumped? Do you go, bastard? You know?
Yeah.
I would think so, right? Because Oxford's so much older, right?
I mean, my I've got a couple of friends who went and studied at Harvard, and for us, it's a bit of a step up. But
Okay.
I think that's just because a lot of us kind of worship America in general. But I think Oxford, yeah, it's just because of the history of it. But funny thing is, you could do, for example, a teaching degree at Oxford, and you don't need great grades or anything to get in for a teaching degree at Oxford.
Really?
Like, so you could go to Oxford, and if you play it right, it's not it's not completely barred for everyone. I actually did. I did interviews for Oxford before I ended up going to the
Really?
university I went to, and that was an interesting experience. Very, it is very old school. I mean, it's because I studied in the States as well. Like I kind of know. I know not every college is the same, but I went to Vassar College in upstate New York, and like the difference, like in Oxford, it was sort of 3 days of interviews. You're in someone's house, basically, like the tutors, they invite you to their house, which is obviously on site, but you're sitting in a living room being asked about something you really don't understand. I mean, I read English literature, but like the stuff was kind of over my head at 18 years old. And then you notice, as I did, that behind him, that one of the tutors, there was like a line of books that were written by him. They all had his name on. And I was like, right, okay. I'm a bit out of my depth here, I think,
Yeah.
It's a very particular type of education, Oxford and Cambridge. And I've got a few friends that have been, and none of them really recommend it. So
No, it's fine.
maybe Harvard's better.
And my dad gave me the choice between two all-girl colleges. He's like, there will be no distractions.
Wow.
I was like,
Wow.
all right. So
Wow.
I picked the one in Baltimore City. Then it was called College of Notre Dame of Maryland, which is an
Okay.
all-girl lovely Catholic school, but if you
Yeah.
spell out the acronym, it spells condom.
No.
I didn't think they thought about it.
Yeah, somebody didn't think that through.
Tell me they didn't do that on purpose. Come on.
Oh, I know, right? Yeah.
That's the most ironic thing I've heard in a long time.
Yeah, they've since changed their name over the years. I think they're university now, but I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably sensible. I love that.
It doesn't look so good on a sweatshirt,
No,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Condom lever. Not quite sure about that.
Yeah.
This is the Snaggletooth Extreme Metal Podcast.